When I first met Claire, I thought I'd finally found someone who understood me. She was confident, ambitious, and carried herself with a kind of poise that instantly caught my attention. We met at a friend's engagement party, and while everyone else was focused on champagne and selfies, she was quietly laughing at the absurdity of the whole thing. We ended up talking for hours that night, about everything, from travel to family, to the idea of what makes a marriage last. At the time, she seemed grounded, someone who valued effort over luxury, and that's what drew me in. I come from a modest background. My parents are middle-class people who built everything through hard work. My dad's a retired teacher, and my mom runs a small bakery out of our home. We never had much, but love was abundance. Claire, on the other hand, came from money. Her dad owned several restaurants, her mom was a realtor, and she grew up never really needing to think about bills or sacrifices. Still, she never acted superior, at least not at first. A relationship moved fast. Within a year, I proposed. It felt right. I thought she was the one. She cried when she said yes, and for a while, everything was perfect. We planned the wedding together, or so I thought. Claire had a vision, a vineyard ceremony, designer dresses, an 11-piece band, and a guest list that looked like a Forbes networking event. I didn't mind spending more than I planned, but the deeper we got into planning, the more I realized her priorities weren't about love anymore. They were about image. The first red flag came when she insisted my parents shouldn't host any part of the wedding because it wouldn't fit the theme. I brushed it off, thinking it was about logistics. But a few weeks later, she brought up something that froze me completely. "Babe," she said casually one night while scrolling through her iPad full of wedding vendors, "I've been thinking, your parents should contribute to the wedding fund." I looked at her, confused. They already said they'd help however they can. Mom's baking desserts, and Dad offered to pay for our honeymoon flights. She smirked, like I'd missed the point. "No, I mean really contribute, like financially. If they want to come to the wedding, they should at least show some support." I frowned. "They are supporting us, emotionally. That's what matters." She sighed dramatically, setting her iPad down. "It's not that. It's just everyone else's parents are giving something big. My dad's paying for the venue. My mom's covering the catering. It would be embarrassing if your parents just showed up without giving anything substantial. I was thinking maybe $50,000 would be fair." My jaw dropped. "You're joking, right?" She looked annoyed instead of embarrassed. "No, I'm not. I'm just saying it's our wedding. It's a partnership. Both sides should invest equally." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Claire, my parents don't have that kind of money. And even if they did, I would never ask them for it. This isn't a business deal." Her expression hardened. "Well, if they can't contribute, then maybe they shouldn't come. I don't want people thinking your family's cheap." That word, cheap, cut deeper than she knew. My parents had spent their lives giving me everything they could. They taught me respect, humility, kindness. And here was the woman I planned to marry, putting a price tag on their love. I tried to reason with her, thinking it was stress talking, but she doubled down. "I'm serious, Matt. This is our image. You know how people talk." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about how fast everything had changed. The girl I fell in love with wasn't the same woman demanding money to let my parents witness my wedding. I called my mom the next morning, trying to hide the shake in my voice. "Mom, about the wedding, Claire's a little stressed. There's been some talk about contributions, but don't worry about it." My mom was silent for a long moment before she said, "Son, if she's making you uncomfortable about money now, she'll do it again later. A marriage isn't about balancing ledgers." I wanted to defend Claire, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew my mom was right. Still, I wasn't ready to give up. I thought maybe Claire would come to her senses, that this was just wedding fever talking. But things only got worse. She started making comments about my clothes, my car, even the ring I bought her, said it wasn't timeless enough. Every time she spoke, I heard less love and more ego. The breaking point came during a dinner with her parents. She proudly announced, "We've decided Matt's parents will contribute 50 grand toward the guest accommodations." Her dad nodded approvingly, while I sat there stunned, realizing she hadn't even told me she planned to say that. After dinner, I confronted her. "Why would you say that?" I asked. She rolled her eyes. "Because you wouldn't. Someone had to set expectations." I took a long breath. "Claire, my parents aren't paying to attend their son's wedding. If that's a problem, maybe we shouldn't be getting married at all." Her face went cold, her voice cutting. "Maybe we shouldn't." That night, I packed a bag and left her apartment. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. Love should never cost this much. The morning after I left Claire's apartment, I sat in my car for nearly an hour before driving anywhere. My phone buzzed a dozen times. Texts, missed calls, voice messages, all from her. At first, she sounded angry, then guilty, then desperate. "Matt, I didn't mean it like that," one of her voicemails said, her voice breaking. "You know I just get overwhelmed when I'm stressed. Please don't do something stupid over money." But it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about who she had become, or maybe who she had been all along, and I just hadn't seen it. I drove straight to my parents' house. My mom opened the door before I even knocked. "You didn't sleep, did you?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. She didn't push for details. She just made coffee and let me sit in silence until I was ready. My dad, who'd always been calm and careful with his words, finally said, "Son, sometimes you have to decide what kind of peace you want. The kind that costs you everything, or the kind that costs you someone." I knew exactly what he meant. Still, part of me wanted to believe Claire could change. We'd built so many memories together. Our road trips, lazy Sundays, nights where we'd dream about a family of our own. It was hard to accept that it might all have been a facade. A few days later, I agreed to meet her at a small cafe. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept either. "I'm sorry," she said the moment I sat down. "I was stupid. I let my parents get in my head. They've been pressuring me about appearances, about making sure our wedding looks respectable. I wasn't thinking clearly." I studied her face. There were tears in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they came from regret or fear of losing control. "Claire," I said softly, "my parents are humble people. They've never cared about appearances. I can't marry someone who measures love in dollars." She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Please don't throw us away over this. I'll fix it. I'll call everyone, tell them I was wrong. I'll even apologize to your parents." I wanted to believe her. Against my better judgment, I did. For the next few weeks, things calmed down. She went back to being the Claire I fell in love with. Or maybe she was just pretending well. We resumed planning, but on a smaller scale this time. She said she wanted to focus on us, not the show. For a while, I thought we might make it. Then came her bridal shower. I wasn't supposed to be there, but one of my friends who was dating her cousin called me afterward. "Hey man," he said hesitantly, "you should probably know Claire told everyone your parents are paying 50 grand now." My heart sunk. "That's not true," I said flatly. "I know, but she said it was their gift. She even joked about how she finally convinced them." That was the moment something inside me broke. I realized her apology hadn't come from love. It came from damage control. I drove to her apartment that night, and when she opened the door, she smiled like nothing was wrong. "Hey," she said, reaching for a hug.
I stepped back. Why did you tell people my parents are giving us $50,000? Her face froze. Who told you that? Doesn't matter. Why would you lie like that? Her tone shifted instantly, defensive and sharp. Because I didn't want to look bad, okay? Everyone expects certain things from me. You don't understand that kind of pressure. I took a slow breath, trying not to yell. You don't lie about my family to make yourself look better. She folded her arms. You're overreacting. It's not like I took the money. I stared at her, almost laughing from disbelief. You don't even see how wrong this is, do you? You're so wrapped up in appearances that you'd sell your own integrity. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please, stop being dramatic. You act like you're some moral hero. Every couple has arguments about money. This isn't about money, I said quietly. It's about respect. There was a long silence. Then she said something I'll never forget. Maybe your parents don't belong at our wedding after all. If they can't meet expectations, they'll just embarrass us. Embarrass us? Yes, she snapped. You don't get it, Matt. My friends, my family, they all come from a certain circle. If your parents show up in their thrift store clothes and homemade gifts, people will talk. I don't want that. It took everything in me to not lose it right there. I looked at her and realized the woman I loved wasn't standing in front of me anymore. Or maybe she never was. You know what? I said finally, my voice trembling. You're right. They don't belong there, and neither do I. She blinked, confused. What's that supposed to mean? It means you can have your wedding, Claire. You can have your perfect venue, your designer dress, your wealthy guests, but you won't have me. Her mouth fell open. You're not serious. Dead serious. I took off the engagement ring she had given back after our last fight and placed it gently on the counter. You can keep this, too. It seems to fit your world better than mine. I walked out before she could respond. The air outside felt cold and freeing at the same time. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just drove until the city lights disappeared behind me. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe.
In the days after I walked away, silence became my closest companion. My phone barely rang anymore. The wedding invitations we'd already sent were a cruel reminder, sitting in a box in my apartment, mocking me with every glance. The deposit money I'd lost on the venue didn't even sting compared to the emptiness I felt. I wasn't angry at Claire anymore, at least not in the way I had been that night. What lingered instead was something deeper, heavier, a sadness that comes from realizing you gave your heart to someone who never really saw you for who you were. My parents didn't say much when I told them everything. My mom just hugged me tightly and whispered, "Sometimes walking away is the bravest thing a person can do." My dad gave a quiet nod, like he'd been expecting this ending long before I had. I threw myself into work, trying to rebuild some sense of normalcy. But the truth was, Claire still haunted me. Every song on the radio, every couple holding hands at a crosswalk, it all felt like echoes of what we were supposed to be. And then one evening, 3 weeks after I ended things, I got a call from her. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Matt," she said softly when I picked up, "please don't hang up. I just need to talk." I sighed. "What do you want, Claire?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything. For the things I said about your parents. I was wrong. I know that now." Her voice was trembling, and for a moment I heard the woman I once loved, the one who used to hum when she cooked, who laughed at my bad jokes, who told me I made her feel safe. "Claire," I said quietly, "sorry doesn't erase what happened. You wanted to make my family feel small, and I can't forget that." "I know," she said, her voice breaking, "but please, I've lost everything. My parents are furious. They canceled the deposits. My friends have stopped talking to me because they think I pushed you away over money. I deserve it, I do, but I can't stop thinking about you." I stayed silent, listening to her sobs through the phone. Part of me wanted to comfort her,
But another part of me, the rational part, knew that some lessons only sink in when you face them alone. "Claire," I said finally, "I don't hate you, but love built on conditions isn't love. It's a transaction, and I'm done making payments." She didn't say anything after that, just quiet breathing, like she wanted to respond but couldn't find the words. "Goodbye, Claire," I said softly, before hanging up. A few days later, I got an email from a mutual friend who worked with her. He told me Claire had called off the entire wedding officially. "She's been a mess, but she won't admit what she did to you. She's blaming pressure and her parents." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for peace. And in some strange way, I'd found it. I focused on my family more after that. I visited my parents every weekend, helped my mom with her bakery orders, played chess with my dad in the backyard. Life started to feel simple again. Beautifully simple. Then, months later, I ran into Claire unexpectedly. It was a Saturday morning, and I was grabbing coffee at a small shop near my office. She walked in wearing jeans and a plain sweater, no makeup, no entourage. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. She saw me and froze. "Matt," she said softly, like the name itself carried weight. "Hi." I nodded politely. "Hey." There was a long silence before she spoke again. "You look good." I smiled faintly. "Thanks, you too." She looked down at her cup, fidgeting. "I heard you're doing well. Your mom's bakery's expanding?" I nodded. "Yeah, she's been getting a lot of local orders lately." She smiled sadly. "I always loved her cookies." I wanted to say something comforting, but I couldn't find the right words. We stood there in the awkward quiet of two people who once shared everything, but now had nothing left to say. Then she whispered, "You know, I thought about calling your parents to apologize." I looked at her carefully. "Did you?" She shook her head. "I couldn't. I was too ashamed. They were so kind to me. I don't think I deserve their forgiveness." "They'd forgive you. They just wouldn't forget." She nodded slowly, wiping away a tear. "I don't blame them. I wouldn't either." There was something sincere in her eyes. Regret, humility, maybe even growth. But it didn't change the past. "I hope you're okay," I said finally. She gave a small, broken smile. "I'm getting there. It just took losing everything to realize what actually mattered." We stood in silence one last time before I wished her good luck and walked out. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quietly freeing. It was the kind of peace that doesn't come from winning, but from letting go. That night I found an old photo of us from the early days, before the wedding plans, before the arguments, before the expectations. We looked happy, pure. I didn't delete it. I just placed it back in the drawer and whispered to myself, "Thank you for teaching me what love shouldn't cost."
It's been almost a year since I last saw Claire, and sometimes I still think about her. Not in the way you think about someone you miss, but in the quiet spaces where memory lingers without pain. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges, and what used to feel like betrayal now feels more like a lesson I was destined to learn. My life didn't just go back to normal after her, it evolved. I moved to a new apartment, closer to my parents, started taking over some of my mom's bakery management so she could rest more, and even began volunteering on weekends at a local community center, teaching basic finance to young couples. Ironic, considering what ended my relationship. There was something healing in helping others start right where I went wrong. The people there didn't care about designer labels or how much money someone's parents made. They cared about love, trust, partnership, the things that actually hold a marriage together. One afternoon after class, a woman named Hannah came up to me to ask about budgeting for a wedding. She was kind, thoughtful, and had that same simplicity I once thought was rare in people. She told me she was engaged but wanted to plan a small ceremony within her means. We ended up talking for an hour, not just about finances, but about what it means to start a life with someone honestly. She laughed when I told her I used to think keeping up appearances was harmless, until it cost me the person I thought I loved. There was something in her laughter that reminded me of light after a storm, soft but real. Over the next few months, we kept running into each other, sometimes by chance, sometimes maybe not. She was nothing like Claire, and maybe that's why it worked. Where Claire chased perfection, Hannah embraced imperfection. Where Claire saw money as validation, Hannah saw effort as love. One evening, while closing up the community center, I found myself telling her the whole story about Claire, the wedding, the $50,000 demand, everything. She listened quietly, her eyes soft but steady, not judging, not pitying. When I finished, she said something that stayed with me. "It sounds like you didn't lose love, Matt. You just made room for the right kind." I didn't respond right away, but inside I felt something shift. A calm acceptance that maybe everything had happened exactly as it needed to. Months passed and life became beautifully simple again. My mom's bakery turned into a small local favorite. My dad and I started fixing up an old pickup truck together, something we'd talked about for years. And somewhere in between, Hannah and I became inseparable. We weren't rushing into anything. After what I'd been through, I needed to move slowly, to build something real, not just beautiful. She understood that. One Sunday afternoon, she came with me to visit my parents. My mom baked her famous lemon pie, and my dad pulled out old photo albums, the ones that smelled like nostalgia and time. At one point, my mom looked at Hannah and said, "You know, the last time we were planning a wedding, it didn't feel right, but this time it does." Hannah smiled, and I realized how true that was. There was no pressure, no performance, no image to protect, just two families sharing a meal, laughing, and being honest with one another. Later that evening, as I was driving Hannah home, she looked out the window and said quietly, "Do you ever think about her?" I didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Not because I miss her, but because she taught me what kind of man I don't want to become." Hannah nodded, understanding. She said, "I think she was a chapter, and sometimes you can't start a new book until you finish the last page." I smiled. "Yeah," I said, and I think I finally did. A few weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail. It had no return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a letter from Claire. It was short, handwritten, almost trembling in tone. She said she'd moved away, started therapy, and was working at a nonprofit helping low-income families plan weddings on small budgets. She wrote, "I finally understand what you meant when you said love shouldn't cost this much. I hope you found the peace I couldn't give you." I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into a drawer. There was no anger left, only gratitude. Not because she hurt me, but because she taught me to protect my peace above all else. That night, as I closed my bakery books and watched the sun dip behind the hills, I thought about how love isn't something you can buy or prove with grand gestures. It's in the small things, the morning coffee, the patience during hard days, the laughter that doesn't need an audience. The price of peace had been steep, but it bought me something priceless. A second chance at the kind of love that doesn't demand payment, only presence. I'm not sure where life will take me from here. Maybe one day I'll stand at an altar again. But if I do, my parents will be there. Not because they paid for a seat, but because they earned it with years of love, sacrifice, and faith. And this time, I'll know that's all that ever mattered.